Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel and today I'm doing a video that I really enjoy doing. I only do it once a year, and that is my yearly goals video. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how my 2025 goals have gone, and then I'm going to talk about what my focus is going to be for my reading, primarily for my reading in 2026. I'm not going to do a detailed 2025 wrap-up video until January. I want to make sure that 2025 is completely over and in the books before I really hunker down and look at my stats and do a top 10 or whatever, because there's still a few weeks left. I'm still going to be reading some books. I may come up with a new favorite or two by the end of the year still, but I do want to take a look sort of at my overall goals, how they've been going, and then talk about what my priorities are going to be in 2026. So that's what we're doing today. I really like doing this every so often, even if it's just once a year, because I do like to, again, sort of take a look at what I've been doing and think about what I want to prioritize or focus on going forward. Because of course, for me, it's not so much like, am I meeting the number goals, or am I meeting, am I reading X number of books, or am I finishing this TBR or that TBR? It's more just like, okay, in the past year, what have I found that I really liked? What has not been working for me as much? And how have my priorities shifted? Because my priorities do tend to shift over time, right? As I find new areas of interest and I find new things that I want to focus on, the things that I am starting to the things that I prioritize might be changing over time. And so this is a good opportunity for me to evaluate that and determine the kind of direction that I want to go forward in the coming months. So that's really the point of the goal setting thing for me. It's not so much about like hitting a certain number or anything like that. It's just sort of, what are my priorities? What am I going to be focusing on? So first of all, I will say possibly my number one goal in 2025 was to slow down a little bit. If you watch my video a year ago that I made towards the end of 2024, I talked about how in 2024 I felt like I was reading at kind of a breakneck pace. I believe the total number of books that I completed in 2024 was like 93, and many of them were quite short. So I felt like I was just reading at a really breakneck pace for me personally, right? Obviously, everybody reads at a different pace. Everybody has their own, like, what works for them and what doesn't. For me, 93 books, and so many of them being so short, just felt like it was too much, and I wasn't retaining as much of each individual book as I wanted to be in 2024. So one of my primary goal in 2025 was to kind of slow down a little bit. And I've succeeded in that goal. Currently, as of filming, today is December 6th, I have read 74 books so far this year. I'm definitely not going to get to 93. I might get to 80, maybe, by the end of the year. So I have slowed down, in fact, and according to Storygraph, the average number of days that it takes me to read a book is like 10. I believe in 2024 it was closer to 7 or 8 days per book on average. Of course, obviously that's an average. There are books that I'm reading in one sitting. There are books that I'm reading over the course of a couple of days. And there's books that I'm taking weeks or even sometimes months to read in their entirety. But I do feel like that sort of 10-day average feels much better to me than what I was doing in 2024. And also, I just feel like, I have in fact read more of those longer, denser books, and I've taken my time with them, and I've felt less pressure on myself, from myself, to read things really fast. And as a consequence of that, I have stopped doing monthly TBRs, and I've switched to a bi-weekly wrap-up as opposed to like a weekly or a monthly wrap-up, because again, I feel like that fits the pace at which I'm reading generally much better. And so for me, that's really worked out. And so in 2026, I want to pretty much just continue with that, with this pace, right? I feel like I've found a good pace for myself in 2025, and I'm going to continue with that. So I am again in 2026. I'm only going to set my story graph goal for the year at one book, because I don't really want to worry too much about numbers. I just don't want to. I don't want to think about it. I want to continue to not think about it. It worked out great for me in 2025, and I think it's going to continue to work great for me in 2026. Going forward in 2026, I think if 2025 was the year in which I found the correct pace for my reading, I think 2026 is going to be the year in which I really want to focus on some personal projects and some more deep dives of subjects and people and genres that I am particularly interested in. 2026 is going to be, I guess, a project year for me. That is sort of how I'm thinking about it. One of the big changes that I'll be making this year is that I am very likely not going to bother with the Our Fantasy bingo board in 2026. In fact, I probably won't finish the 2025 bingo board. There's a few more books that I have that are sitting on my physical TBR shelf that I'll probably try to get to by the time the 2025 bingo board expires at the end of March. But I'm not going to go out of my way to get to the few prompts that I still have left that would require me to like go hunt something down at the library to fulfill. I'm not going to worry about that because, as I said, my priorities have just kind of shifted. There's nothing wrong with the bingo board. I don't have a problem with the bingo board. It's not that I don't think I can finish it. It's just that I'm focusing on other things such that I just don't think I'm going to finish it, right? I'm probably going to choose not to, because I just have other priorities that I'm focusing on. And that's what I really want to talk about for my goals in 2026. First and foremost, I believe really what I really want to focus on is my fantasy genre project, I don't know if you want to call it a personal curriculum. I don't consider it if I had like written out a syllabus or a reading list or something, then maybe I would go so far as to label it as a personal curriculum, but I haven't done that. This is just a personal thing that I'm working my way through. But I do want to focus on it a lot more in 2026. I've started it, I've read a few things, and I want to do a deeper dive, and I want to focus on it much more in the coming months. So that is one thing that I'm going to be prioritizing in a big way, I hope, in 2026. I'm still reading some Victorian fantasy, and I'm having a good time with it. And I want to continue down that road of reading classic fantasy fiction and also reading about classic fantasy fiction. So that is going to be a major priority for me in 2026. Another major priority for me in 2026 is going to be series. I have currently 3 series of more than 10 books that I am currently sort of in the middle of at various points in. I want to finish 2 of them in 2026 completely. And I want to make sincere progress on the third. So the first, of course, is the Realm of the Elderlings series by Robin Hobb. I have 7 more books to read in that series. The 4-book, the Rainwild Chronicles series, right? That's what it's called, the Rainwild Chronicles. And then the final trilogy, the Fitz and the Fool trilogy. I'm going to finish that in 2026. That is my plan, to have that finished by the end of 2026. The other one that I'm reading is the History of Middle-earth series. It's a 12-volume manuscript history of Middle-earth. So it's the manuscripts by J.R.R. Tolkien, and heavily edited and annotated and commentated on by his son Christopher. I have 4 books left in that series. I have 1 final book in the history of the Lord of the Rings, which is, I believe, Sauron Defeated. And then the final 3 books in the series are tracing the development of the Silmarillion material after the publication of The Lord of the Rings in the 1950s and 60s, when he was really doing some major overhauls of the mythos in the wake of the publication of The Lord of the Rings. And so I want to get that finished as well. There's only 4 books left. These are very dense, sort of scholarly books, so they take me a little while to get through, but I still think 4 of them is very doable for a whole year. I should be able to do that without any difficulty. Again, as long as I am consciously making the effort to focus on that and get that finished, and not be distracted by things like the Our Fantasy Bingo board. I feel like I want to really get this finished, in part because there's a lot of other Tolkien and Tolkien-related reading that I want to do, but a lot of it is very much predicated on having that History of Middle-earth sort of under the belt, right? A lot of scholarship about Tolkien refers very heavily to the History of Middle-earth in various ways. And it's just kind of a foundational thing in the realm of Tolkien scholarship, such that I feel like I need to have it read before I dive more deeply into that area. So I want to get that done. And then the third series that I'm not necessarily planning to finish in 2026, but that I want to make some actual progress on, is Discworld. I've been sorely neglecting my Terry Pratchett reading the past couple of years. Again, a lot of this is just because the Our Fantasy Bingo board just does not lend itself to focusing on series, right? Because you can't. If you're following the rules of the Our Fantasy Bingo board, you're not going to be reading much in the way of series. And so I'm going to sort of discard that, and instead I am going to focus on reading a lot more series. So I'd like to read at least, I think, 10 more books in the Discworld series, which should be very doable for me in 2026. Discworld novels are generally pretty short, and obviously they're quite fun and lighthearted. So it's not like they are taking a lot out of me emotionally, though sometimes they can. Terry Pratchett's writing can absolutely take a lot out of you emotionally if you let it. But I think at least 10 books in the Discworld series is very doable for me in 2026. So I'm going to try to make some serious progress on that. Obviously, I want to focus on a lot of other series too, or, duologies, trilogies, things like that I still haven't finished, that I want to get through and keep up with. I want to do a better job in general of keeping up with series reading, duologies, trilogies, etc., etc. So that is another big focus of mine. And then I have a couple of other pet projects that I would like to do a deeper dive on. I want to read, these are more author focused, so I want to read a lot more John Steinbeck, and I want to read a lot more James Baldwin in 2026. I've read 2 books by each of these authors so far, and I just keep saying, I should really get back to this. I should really get back to this. I apologize for the loudness of my furnace. It's very cold here and the furnace is running a lot and it's just very noisy. But yeah, so I want to read a lot more John Steinbeck. I read The Grapes of Wrath and I read East of Eden in 2025, and I want to read a lot more of his stuff in 2026. I'm not really setting like specific number goals or even necessarily specific titles. I just want to have like in my head, okay, Steinbeck is someone that I want to read more of, and Baldwin is someone that I want to read more of, and maybe even read about them, right? I might read a biography of them or something as well. I just want to have that in the back of my head and be thinking about that and be consciously like looking for them and trying to pick up some more of their stuff in 2026. And this would be like, instead of making myself a classics TBR where I just pick like 12 random classics that I want to read over the course of the year, like this is kind of like that, right? This is going to replace that in a way. I'm definitely going to be reading some other classics in 2026 and some other things in 2026. Obviously, I'm also a big mood reader, so again, a lot of this is just going to be based on what I'm feeling like, and if my priorities change halfway through the year, maybe I'll change them. In fact, I'm thinking about doing like a quarterly type check-in video as part of this to hold myself a little bit more accountable to my goals, to make sure that I am, first of all, that I am actually sticking with some of these goals, and also just to make sure that I'm still interested in them, right? In 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months, because my priorities can change and do change sometimes. And if they do, that's fine. I just want to be able to reassess things, and if I need to make changes, I can. It's perfectly fine, because these are my goals for myself and they don't mean anything to anybody else. It doesn't matter. So that's fine. So that's sort of my broad overarching goals, I think, for 2026. Also, yeah, I do want to try to read a little bit more nonfiction in 2026. I'm thinking about potentially turning Historathon into more of a project or a thematized kind of reading list, possibly based around like the history of belief in ghosts or something like that, or occult practices, history of occult practices or demonology or something like that, just to have, again, more of a broad theme behind all of my reading, instead of just sort of randomly picking things that, oh, well, this is set during, the first, this is a good first quarter Historathon read or whatever. But to be like, okay, well, what's a book about ancient ghosts that I can read, right? Irving Finkel has a great book about Mesopotamian belief in ghosts. He's a world expert in cuneiform tablets, and he's translated a lot of them. And he has an entire book about ghost belief in ancient Mesopotamia that would be a perfect start for this kind of theme. So I might do that as well for Historathon, to try and, again, to sort of focus my reading a little bit, to make sure I have a priority to do a little bit more of a deep dive while still participating in something that I enjoy, which is the Historathon readathon, year-long reading project. But to make it my own in some way, and to merge it with some of my interests in a way that allows me to focus a little bit more and do a little bit more of a deep dive on a subject that I find particularly interesting. So that is the broad idea for my 2026 goals. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any 2026 goals that you're setting for yourself, what have you got? Are you doing a genre project, an author project? Do you just want to read 50 books or whatever? Let me know. Let's talk about it. And yeah, other than that, if you like what you see, like this video, subscribe if you want to see more, if you want to see how I do on these goals over the course of the year, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.